On a Sunday at exactly 7 a.m., I woke up and noticed my husband wasn't in bed. At first, it felt ordinary. He was a restless sleeper, often slipping out to drink water or check his phone. But this time was different. The sheets on his side were cool, the kind of cool that told me he'd been gone for hours, not minutes. The house was unnervingly silent. No hum of the coffee machine. No faint footsteps in the hallway. Just the tick of the wall clock in our bedroom, echoing louder than it should. My eyes scanned the room, landing on the empty spot where his shoes usually sat.
Gone.
I pulled my silk robe tighter, its smooth fabric brushing against my skin as I padded barefoot across the hardwood floor. A weak strip of sunlight filtered through the blinds, painting the living room in pale gold. His wallet wasn't on the counter. His car keys were missing. And then my phone buzzed. A message. I hesitated before reaching for it, my nails clicking against the glass. My chest tightened as I read the preview. It wasn't from him. It was from someone I hadn't heard from in years, a name that carried both pain and defiance. "Olivia, we need to talk. It's about him." I froze, gripping the phone until my knuckles whitened. My heart wasn't just racing from fear. It was something deeper, something I thought I'd buried long ago. Because I knew this wasn't just about my husband being missing. This was about me, and the past I had kept locked away. It's strange how one name on a screen can split your chest open and drag you backward in time. I was 21 the night it all came crashing down. My parents' voices echoed through our small Virginia kitchen, sharp as broken glass. My father stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, his disappointment heavy enough to suffocate me. "You think you can just run off, Olivia?" he snapped. "Writing isn't a career. It's a hobby. You'll end up broke, dependent, pathetic." My mother didn't meet my eyes. She stirred her tea slowly, as if pretending none of this was happening. That silence cut deeper than his words. I remember my hands trembling against the edge of the table, nails digging crescent moons into the wood. My throat burned, but I forced my voice not to crack. "I don't want the safe path. I want my path." The room went cold. My father's laugh wasn't really a laugh, more like a bitter exhale. "Then don't expect this family to catch you when you fall." Those words clung to me like smoke, and for years, I smelled them every time I doubted myself. That night, I packed what little I had, 2 worn suitcases, my journals, and the silver locket my grandmother had given me the year before she died. She had pressed it into my palm at the hospital, her hand frail but steady. Inside it was a tiny pressed daisy, fragile, but preserved. "Olivia," she whispered, her breath faint, "you bloom where they say nothing can grow. Don't forget that." I wore that locket under my sweater the night I walked out. My mother didn't come to the door. My father didn't call my name. Their silence was their final verdict. The taxi's headlights splashed across the house as I shut the door on that chapter. My chest felt hollow, but also alive with something new. A choice. For the first time, I wasn't their daughter first. I was just Olivia, untethered, terrified, and free. I had no plan, no safety net, just a locket with a dried daisy, a heart full of defiance, and a promise to myself, I will never crawl back. I will make them see me, even if it takes years. And so I left, carrying both my fear and my fire into a world that had no idea who I was. When I left home, I landed in New York with little more than 2 suitcases and a stubborn refusal to quit. The city didn't care who I was. Its streets swallowed people whole every day. But I decided it wouldn't swallow me. My first apartment was a shoebox in Brooklyn, walls so thin I could hear the neighbors arguing through the plaster. I worked nights at a diner, pouring endless cups of coffee for cab drivers and night owls. During the day, I wrote until my fingers cramped. Articles, short stories, anything I thought might get published. Most of them were rejected. Some weren't even acknowledged. Every no hit like a stone to the chest, but I kept stacking those stones into a wall I could climb. Then I met Margaret Sloan. She was an editor at a mid-sized publishing house, sharp-eyed with a streak of silver hair and the kind of presence that made people lower their voices. I'd been waitressing the day she slid into a booth, ordering black coffee and toast. On a whim, I slipped one of my short stories, scribbled on the back of receipt paper, under her plate when I refilled her coffee. Instead of tossing it aside, she read it. Right there. "You've got a voice, kid," she said, tapping the paper. Unpolished, but real. That was the beginning. Margaret became the mentor I never expected. She pushed me harder than anyone, ripping apart my drafts, circling cliches in red ink, telling me to dig deeper until the words bled truth. Some nights I cried over the pages, convinced I'd never measure up. But every morning I got back to work. The first small win came when a regional magazine accepted one of my essays. The check was only $200, but I held it like it was gold. With it, I paid half a month's rent and bought myself a secondhand desk from a thrift store. It wasn't much, but it was mine. From there, the victories grew. A blog post went viral. A short story won a small award. Each milestone was a step toward independence. I didn't broadcast them, though. When my family called, on the rare occasions they did, I spoke vaguely. "I'm doing fine. Work's busy." I never mentioned the magazines on the shelves with my byline, never confessed that my words were slowly stitching together a career. Because I wasn't ready to let them see. Not yet. I learned to live in the tension between exhaustion and exhilaration. Nights bled into mornings at the diner, but my afternoons were mine, spent weaving words into stories that slowly built my name. I stopped waiting for validation from the people who had dismissed me. Instead, I built my own. Years passed that way. My apartment grew bigger. My desk moved from a thrift store corner to a sunlit office. Margaret never let me grow complacent. "Don't just write to prove them wrong, Olivia. Write to prove yourself right." And so I did. Quietly, steadily, I turned rejection into fuel, loneliness into grit, and fear into a voice that couldn't be ignored. All the while, the silver locket never left my neck. Whenever doubt whispered too loud, I held it in my palm and remembered my grandmother's words. "You bloom where they say nothing can grow." I was blooming, and no one back home had the faintest idea. The text on my phone had dragged me into memories, but it was the knock on my door later that afternoon that made the past collide with the present. When I opened it, I found myself staring at the last people I expected, my parents. My father, his hair thinner, and his posture not quite as commanding as I remembered. My mother, clutching her purse like a lifeline, her eyes darting nervously at the marble floor of my foyer. They hadn't seen me in nearly a decade. For a long moment, none of us spoke. They seemed to be trying to process the scene. The modern glass walls, the framed covers of magazines on the entryway table, all with my name printed bold beneath the titles. The silence thickened, so I stepped aside. "Come in." They moved cautiously, as though afraid they didn't belong in this space. And maybe they didn't. The living room stretched wide, sunlight spilling across a Persian rug I'd chosen myself. A wall of bookshelves towered behind my sleek oak desk, filled with both my favorite authors and my own novels lined neatly in a row. My mother's eyes caught on the locket resting at my collarbone. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. Finally, my father cleared his throat. "Olivia, you've done well for yourself." It wasn't a compliment. It was disbelief wearing the mask of politeness. I gestured toward the sofa. "Sit." They obeyed like reluctant guests. I stood across from them, letting the room speak before I did. Every piece of furniture, every painting, every award framed on the wall, they all told the story I'd built without them. "You thought I'd fall," I said quietly, my voice steady. "You thought I'd crawl back, begging for a place at your table. But I built my own." My father's face tightened. "We only wanted what was best for you." "No," I cut in. "You wanted what was easiest for you. A daughter who fit neatly into your expectations." But I wasn't meant to be small. My mother's eyes brimmed, but she still didn't speak. Guilt sat heavy between them, though neither wanted to name it. I crossed to my desk and picked up the latest copy of The New Yorker. My essay filled the opening spread. I laid it on the coffee table in front of them, the bold byline unmistakable, Olivia Hayes. "This is mine. All of it. The books, the business, the life you thought I couldn't have." I own this company. I signed the checks. I made the choices. Alone. The weight of those words settled into the room. My father looked down, his jaw working, searching for a response that never came. My mother finally whispered, "We didn't know." "That's the point," I replied. "You didn't want to know." The silence that followed was different than the silence of my childhood kitchen. Back then, it had been a silence of dismissal, of erasure. Now it was a silence of reckoning. I watched as they took it in, the reality of who I had become, the enormity of what they had missed. Shame flickered in my father's eyes for the first time I could remember. My mother's hands trembled against her purse strap. For years, I had imagined this moment. I thought it would feel like triumph, like revenge finally served. But standing there, I realized it felt like something else. Release. Because I didn't need their recognition anymore. I had already written my story. This was simply them reading it too late. I sat across from them, hands folded loosely in my lap, the locket cool against my skin. For years, I had imagined yelling, demanding apologies, making them feel every ounce of the pain they'd handed me. But when the moment arrived, anger wasn't what filled me. It was clarity. "You're here now because you need me," I said, my gaze steady on them. "Not because you suddenly believe in me. Am I right?" My father shifted uncomfortably. My mother's eyes fell to the rug. Silence was admission. I leaned forward. "I'll hear you out. But understand this, I don't bend anymore. If you want a place in my life, there will be conditions." Their heads lifted, both startled. I could almost see the shock ripple through them. The daughter they once dismissed was dictating the terms. First, I began, my tone firm but calm. Respect. No more dismissing my choices. No more pretending my work doesn't matter. If you want to speak to me, you speak with acknowledgement, not condescension. My father opened his mouth, then closed it again. I continued. Second, honesty. I don't want secrets. Not from you. Not from anyone around me. If something's broken, say it. If you're struggling, admit it. I've lived too many years with words left unsaid. My mother's lips quivered. For the first time, she nodded slightly. And third, I paused, letting the silence thicken. You both need to start living your own lives, not trying to live through mine. Whatever dreams you buried, whatever bitterness you carry, let it go. Because I refuse to carry it for you. The words landed heavy, but they didn't shatter me. They freed me. My father finally spoke, his voice lower, less sure. And if we can't do that? I rose, walking to the wide glass window where the city stretched endlessly. My reflection merged with the skyline, taller, stronger than the girl they once knew. I turned back to them. Then you don't get me. Not this version of me. Not any version. The silence that followed wasn't the old kind of silence. It wasn't dismissal. It was the stunned silence of people who realized the balance had shifted permanently. I softened my voice, though not my stance. I'm not shutting you out. I'm giving you a door. But if you step through, it's on my terms. Respect. Honesty. Growth. Otherwise, it stays closed. For a moment, I thought my father would argue, that pride would choke any chance of change. But instead, he lowered his gaze. My mother, still clutching her purse, whispered, "We'll try." And for the first time, I believed she meant it. The power wasn't in making them small. The power was in no longer needing their approval, yet still offering them a chance I controlled. The house was quiet again after they left, but it wasn't the same kind of quiet I'd woken up to that morning. This quiet was lighter, freer, like the air after a storm finally breaks. I walked through my living room, fingertips brushing the spines of books lined neatly on the shelves. Each one held a piece of me. The girl who once shook under her father's words, the young woman who cried over rejection slips, the writer who refused to quit. My life was here, etched into every page. At my desk, the late afternoon sun slanted across the wood, warming the silver locket that still hung around my neck. I unclasped it gently, holding it in my palm. The pressed daisy inside had grown brittle with time, but it was still intact, fragile, yet enduring. just like me. My grandmother's voice seemed to echo in my ears. You bloom where they say nothing can grow. I smiled, realizing I had carried that truth through every step, even when I didn't know it. I had bloomed, not for my parents, not for my husband, not even for the world. I bloomed for me. And strangely, I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't need to be. My strength wasn't measured by how much pain I could throw back at them. It was measured by how gracefully I could carry myself forward. I placed the locket back around my neck and straightened my shoulders. The city pulsed outside my window, alive with possibility. My phone buzzed again on the desk, but this time, I didn't flinch. Whoever it was, whatever storm was coming next, I knew I could face it. Because I had already faced the worst, being told I was nothing, and I had turned it into everything. I closed my eyes for a moment, let the peace settle in my chest, then whispered the truth that would carry me through the rest of my life. I am no longer waiting to be found. I am the one who chooses where I stand.